So here's the deal. When people start talking about training splits, they usually get caught up in this idea of the perfect plan. You'll hear stuff like, bro, push-pull legs is the only way to grow, or nah, full body is the real deal. And then some guy out there is still clinging to the old school bro split, where chest gets a whole day, but somehow calves never even make it onto the calendar. The truth, science actually gives us a much clearer picture. The most effective training split isn't about what sounds cool or what your favorite influencer says. It's about how many times per week you can stimulate each muscle group, how much total volume you're able to fit in, and how well you can recover from it. That's the winning formula. If you want maximum muscle growth, here's the simple fact. Hitting a muscle group more than once per week is generally superior. Think of it like giving your muscles 2 chances to grow instead of just 1. Why flip the coin once when you can flip it twice and double your odds? So full body 3 times a week, upper lower 4 times a week, or push-pull legs 6 times a week, those are all excellent structures. What matters is the balance between volume and frequency. Recovery is the other side of the coin. Training hard is great, but if your split buries you in soreness so deep you can't even lift your arms to shampoo your hair, you're not winning, you're actually holding back growth. The split should match your lifestyle, sleep, nutrition, and stress levels. For some folks, 6 days of push-pull legs works beautifully. For others, a 4-day upper-lower is perfect. If you can't recover, you can't grow. And don't forget, progressive overload is king. It doesn't matter what split you pick if the weights aren't going up, the reps aren't climbing, or the effort isn't dialed in. A perfect split with lazy execution is just a fancy way to spin your wheels. So the bottom line is, the best training split isn't magical. It's the one that hits each muscle at least twice a week, balances volume and recovery, and lets you consistently overload in the gym. Nail those principles, and your split, whichever version you choose, becomes the most effective for maximum growth. All right, let's really dig into this first point the way I would explain it if I were giving a lecture to lifters who are serious about growth, but maybe still stuck in some outdated training dogma. So frequency beats tradition. That sounds simple, right? But let me unpack it in a way that makes sense. Here's the issue. For decades, the bro split dominated bodybuilding culture. Monday is chest, Tuesday is back, Wednesday is shoulders, Thursday is arms, and if you're lucky or genetically blessed, you might throw in legs on Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, well, that's either abs or forget it, let's party. Now, the problem isn't that these workouts are useless. You're still training, you're still working hard. But if you look at what we know about muscle protein synthesis, the actual process of your body repairing and building muscle tissue after a workout, it tends to stay elevated for about 24 to 72 hours. That means after 2 or 3 days, the growth signal from that chest workout is basically gone. By the time you hit chest again the next Monday, your body has just been hanging out doing not much. You basically left gains on the table for 4 or 5 days. That's not efficient, and it's definitely not optimal if you care about maximizing results. Now let's flip the script. Imagine instead of hammering your chest with 20 sets on Monday and then ignoring it until next week, you spread those 20 sets across 2 or 3 sessions. Say you hit chest for 8 to 10 sets on Monday and then again on Thursday. What happens? You stimulate protein synthesis twice, you recover in between, and you actually end up with a better quality of training because you're not annihilating the muscle in one go. Your sets on Monday look good, your sets on Thursday look good, and across the week you get more total high-quality work. That's the real difference. It's not about some magical exercise order or secret routine. It's simply about hitting the muscle often enough to keep the growth switch flipped on. Another huge advantage of training with more frequency is fatigue management. Let's go back to that chest Monday guy. By the time he's on set 17 of his bench presses, dumbbell presses, flies, dips, whatever he's throwing at his chest that day, he's exhausted. His joints are beat up, his nervous system is fried, and his technique is sloppy. The last 5 or 6 sets probably aren't even hitting his pecs the way they should. So not only is he doing less effective work, but he's also increasing his risk of injury. Compare that to a lifter who spreads those sets out. Each workout, they're fresher, they can push heavier weights with better technique, and they recover quicker. That's a recipe for sustainable long-term growth. Now, does this mean once a week training is totally worthless? No, of course not. If you're a beginner, almost anything will work because your body is so sensitive to training. If you're a genetic freak, you'll grow on practically any program. But for the vast majority of lifters, the average guy or girl in the gym who really wants to maximize their progress, twice a week frequency per muscle group is going to get you further faster and with fewer plateaus. There's also a psychological benefit here. When you're training muscles multiple times per week, you don't feel the pressure to annihilate them in one session. You know you'll be back in a few days. That allows you to focus on progression instead of destruction. You walk out of the gym feeling challenged, but not crippled. And here's the thing. When you're not constantly destroyed by soreness, you can train harder more consistently. Consistency is king. You don't need one epic chest workout followed by 5 days of wincing every time you put on a seatbelt. You need multiple good workouts stacked over weeks and months. That's how physiques are built. Let's touch on science for a second, because people always ask, is this just theory or is there data? Well, multiple studies have compared once a week versus 2 or 3 times a week frequency. And guess what? Higher frequency consistently shows equal or greater gains in muscle size and strength, even when weekly volume is the same. That's a huge point. It means if you take the same 15 sets for chest and spread them across 2 or 3 workouts instead of 1, you're likely to grow more. It's not about doing more total work. It's about distributing that work more intelligently. Think of it like eating. If I told you to eat all your calories for the week in one giant meal on Monday, technically you'd hit your numbers. But do you think your body is going to use that food effectively? No way. You'll feel awful. Most of it will go to waste. And by Friday, you'll be starving. Training works the same way. Muscles don't need one massive flood of stimulus. They respond better to regular repeated signals. You're basically feeding your muscles training in smaller, more effective doses. And here's the kicker. Once you wrap your head around frequency, you realize you can actually train more efficiently. A lifter doing a full body routine 3 times a week might spend just an hour in the gym each session and grow just as well, or better than someone grinding out 2-hour marathon bro splits. That's not only smarter, it's more sustainable for real life. Unless your job is literally being a bodybuilder, you probably don't have the time or energy to destroy one muscle group per day. Higher frequency splits let you fit training into your life without feeling like your life is consumed by training. So, the big takeaway here is simple. Frequency beats tradition. The old school 1 body part per week model might still have diehard fans, but the evidence is stacked against it. Training each muscle group at least twice a week gives you more growth opportunities, higher quality training sessions, better recovery, and more sustainable progress. And if you're serious about building muscle, that's the kind of system you want working for you, not against you. All right, let's dive into the second key point, the balance between training volume and recovery, because this is one of those things people either overcomplicate or totally ignore. And usually they ignore it at their own peril. So here's the reality. Muscles grow when they're trained hard enough with enough total work, but they don't grow if you can't recover from that work. That's the dance. That's the balance. And if you get it right, your progress feels almost effortless. If you screw it up, you either stall, get hurt, or burn out. First, let's talk about volume. In practical terms, training volume is just the total number of hard sets you do for a muscle group in a given week. And research has shown pretty clearly that more volume generally means more growth up to a point. If you're doing 2 sets of biceps curls a week, you're probably not giving your arms enough stimulus to really force growth. But if you're doing 40 sets of biceps curls a week, you're probably going to hate your life. Your elbows will feel like rusty hinges, and your growth won't be any better than if you'd done half of that. So the game is finding that sweet spot. For most people, that's usually somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week. But here's the trick. That number doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's not just do 15 sets and you'll magically grow. It depends on how well you can recover from those sets. In recovery isn't just about how long you rest between workouts. It's about your sleep, your nutrition, your stress levels, even your genetics. If you're sleeping 5 hours a night, eating like a bird, and stressing about work all day, your ability to recover is going to be terrible. In that situation, blasting yourself with 20 sets per muscle per week is a one-way ticket to overtraining. On the flip side, if you're eating plenty of calories, sleeping like a baby, and managing stress well, you might thrive on the higher end of that volume range. Now, let's bring this back to training splits. The best split isn't just about how you divide up your workouts. It's about how you distribute that weekly volume in a way that matches your recovery. If you're doing an upper-lower split 4 days a week, you might do 5 to 6 hard sets for chest on Monday, and then another 5 to 6 on Thursday. That gives you 10 to 12 total sets for the week. Solid volume, but spaced out so you can recover. If you tried to cram all 12 sets into one day, you'd be wrecked, and half of those sets would be garbage because you'd be too fatigued to perform them well. So splitting them up improves not only recovery, but also the quality of the work. Another important point here is understanding that recovery is not just about muscles, it's also about your nervous system and your joints. Muscles actually recover fairly quickly if you feed them and rest them. But your tendons, ligaments, and nervous system, those take longer. If you're hammering heavy deadlifts 3 times a week, your lower back and your CNS are going to wave the white flag pretty fast, even if your hamstrings and glutes technically could handle more. So when you're designing your split, you've got to think beyond just muscles. You've got to think about the whole system and how much total stress you're placing on it. And let's not forget that recovery is also where the growth happens. Training is the stimulus. You go in the gym, you do damage, you send a signal, but the actual muscle growth occurs outside the gym when you're resting, sleeping, and fueling properly. If your training split is so aggressive that you never feel recovered, you're not giving your body the chance to adapt. That's why balancing volume and recovery is everything. You need enough volume to send a loud growth signal, but not so much that the body can't respond to it. People love to brag about how hard they train. Man, I did 30 sets of legs yesterday and I couldn't walk for 3 days. Cool story, but guess what? If you're too sore to train legs again for another week, you just sabotaged your frequency and your total growth over time. That's not hardcore, that's just inefficient. It's like working a job where you do 80 hours in 1 week and then take the next week off. Wouldn't it be smarter to work 40 hours every week consistently? That's exactly what balancing volume and recovery looks like in training. There's also an important mental side to this balance. When your training matches your recovery, you feel good, you're motivated to train, you see progress, and you stay consistent. When your training outpaces your recovery, you start dragging yourself to the gym, you feel beat up, and eventually you quit or get injured. And let's be real, nobody builds muscle when they're sidelined with tendonitis or burnout. So, how do you know if you've got the balance right? Simple checkpoints. Are you sore all the time? Or just mildly sore for a day or two after training? Are you able to add weight or reps consistently over weeks? Do you feel eager to train, or are you dreading it? If the answers are mostly positive, your volume and recovery are probably balanced. If not, something's off. The beauty of this concept is that it's flexible. There's no one perfect split because different people recover at different rates. A college student with no job, plenty of sleep, and lots of food might thrive on 6 days a week with push-pull legs. A busy parent with a stressful job might grow best on 3 full-body workouts a week. Both are valid as long as the balance between volume and recovery is there. At the end of the day, remember this. Muscles don't care about how much you suffer. They care about stimulus and adaptation. The best training split for you is the one that delivers enough hard sets to send the signal and still allows you to recover so your body can actually grow. That's the sweet spot. If you find it, progress comes steadily. If you ignore it, you're just spinning your wheels no matter how hardcore your program looks on paper. All right, let's dig into the third key point, personalization. This is where so many lifters go wrong, because they get caught up in thinking there's one universal best split that works for everyone. You'll hear people argue online like it's religion, push-pull legs is the holy grail. Or if you're not doing full body, you're wasting your time. The reality, the best split isn't about what some random guru tells you, it's about what actually fits your life, your recovery ability, and your preferences. Because if you can't stick to a split long-term, it doesn't matter how optimal it looks on paper. But start with the basics. There are a few main split structures that most people gravitate toward: full body, upper, lower, and push-pull legs. Each of them can be highly effective. Full body is usually done 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You hit every major muscle group each session. Keep volume per muscle moderate and let recovery happen on the off days. This is fantastic for beginners or people with busy lives because you don't have to train every day to make progress. You get in, hit the big lifts, and you're done. Simple, efficient, and surprisingly powerful. Then you've got the upper-lower split. 4 days a week, usually something like Monday upper, Tuesday lower, rest Wednesday, Thursday upper, Friday lower. This gives you more total volume per week compared to full body, but it's still manageable for most people's schedules. Upper lower is one of the most balanced approaches because you're hitting each muscle twice a week, but you're not locked into living at the gym. For intermediate lifters, this is a sweet spot. Finally, there's push-pull legs, usually done 6 days a week. Push day is chest, shoulders, triceps. Pull day is back, biceps. Leg day is, well, everything you'd rather skip but shouldn't. Quads, hamstrings, calves. The split gives you the highest frequency and highest weekly volume, but it's also the most demanding. It works beautifully if you've got the time, energy, and recovery resources. But if you're working 50 hours a week, sleeping 6 hours a night, and eating inconsistently, push-pull legs might chew you up and spit you out. And that's the key point. All three of these splits can work. The question is, which one fits your life? A college student who loves training and has time to hit the gym 6 days a week might thrive on push-pull legs. The busy parent with kids and work stress might do far better with a 3-day full-body program. An intermediate lifter with a solid routine and a normal schedule might find upper-lower is just right. None of these people are wrong. They're just picking the structure that lets them be consistent. Here's another layer of personalization: exercise preference. If you hate barbell squats but love hack squats, guess what? You don't have to do barbell squats. If you prefer dumbbells to machines or vice versa, your split can reflect that. The principles, frequency, volume, recovery, progressive overload are what matter most. The exact split is just the framework. Too many people get caught up in copying the split of their favorite bodybuilder or influencer, forgetting that those guys have different genetics, different schedules, and usually, let's be honest, different supplementation. What works for them isn't automatically the best for you. Now, let's touch on lifestyle and recovery ability. This is where personalization really makes or breaks a program. Imagine two lifters. Lifter A is a 22-year-old college student with no kids, plenty of sleep, and a flexible schedule. Lifter B is a 40-year-old with a demanding job, 2 kids, and high stress. If both of them try to run the same 6-day push-pull legs split, who's going to burn out first? Obviously Lifter B, but here's the twist. If Lifter B runs a smart 3-day full-body program and recovers well, he might actually make better progress than Lifter A, who's overdoing it and under-recovering. Personalization means choosing the split that allows you to train hard and recover consistently. Another important piece is enjoyment. If you hate your split, you won't stick to it. Simple as that. Some people love the feeling of hammering one muscle group at a time and walking out of the gym with a massive pump. For them, an upper-lower split with plenty of accessory work might feel amazing. Others like the efficiency of full body, getting in, doing their squats, presses, and pulls, and getting out. If you enjoy what you're doing, your consistency skyrockets. Inconsistency over months and years is the real secret weapon. And let's not forget progression. A split only works if you can add weight, reps, or effort over time. If your split leaves you so sore or drained that you can't train effectively the next time around, that's not optimal. It's just punishment. The best split for you is the one that lets you show up fresh enough to actually progress. For one lifter, that might be 6 days a week. For another, it might be 3. Both are right because both are progressing. So here's the bottom line. There is no universal best training split. There are principles that apply to everyone. Train each muscle at least twice a week, balance volume and recovery, push for progressive overload. But how you apply those principles is up to you. Full body, upper lower, push-pull legs, they all work. What matters is choosing the split that fits your recovery, your lifestyle, your preferences, and your long-term consistency. That's the real personalization. And once you embrace that, you stop chasing the mythical perfect split and start building the one that's perfect for you. All right, let's wrap this whole thing up with a fourth point, because if there's one law in training that rules over all the others, it's this: progressive overload. You can have the fanciest training split in the world. You can hit each muscle group 3 times a week. You can balance volume and recovery perfectly. But if you're not progressively overloading, you're not building muscle. Period. It's the non-negotiable principle. So what does progressive overload actually mean? In simple terms, it means doing more over time. That could mean adding weight to the bar, doing more reps with the same weight, adding an extra set when recovery allows, or improving your technique and execution so that the same weight is actually more effective at targeting the muscle. The exact method can vary, but the underlying principle is the same. If you're lifting the same weights for the same reps 6 months from now, don't expect your muscles to look any different. Your body only adapts to what you force it to adapt to. Here's the thing. People love to obsess over splits, as if the secret lies in the arrangement of training days. Yes, frequency and volume matter a lot, but none of that matters if you're just going through the motions. You can train chest twice a week with 12 sets each time. But if the bench press is still at 185 pounds for 3 sets of 8 after a year, then you've basically just been practicing the bench press, not growing from it. Muscles grow when they're challenged, and progressive overload is how you keep upping the challenge. Now, overload doesn't mean you have to add weight every single workout. That's the classic newbie mistake. In the beginning, when you're fresh to training, you can add 5 pounds to the bar every week and make progress like magic. That's the honeymoon phase. But as you get more advanced, things slow down. You might go weeks before you add noticeable weight, and that's normal. Overload at that stage comes from pushing closer to failure, squeezing out an extra rep here and there, or just getting better at moving the weight with control. If your sets feel more stable, more targeted, more intentional, that's overload too. The beauty of progressive overload is that it applies universally. It doesn't matter whether you're doing full body, upper lower, or push-pull legs. It doesn't matter if you're training 3 days a week or 6. Without overload, your split is just a schedule. With overload, your split becomes a tool for growth. Think of it like driving a car. You can have the nicest car in the world, but if you don't press on the gas, you're not going anywhere. Progressive overload is the gas pedal. Here's another thing to keep in mind. Overload should be gradual, not reckless. Some lifters think more is better and try to slap on 20 pounds every workout. That's not progression, that's ego lifting. And usually it ends with sloppy reps, injuries, or just plateauing faster because the body can't keep up. Smart overload is steady and sustainable. Add 5 pounds when you can do all your reps cleanly. Add 1 more rep to each set when the last rep doesn't look like a car accident. Small, consistent increases beat massive, unsustainable jumps every time. There's also the issue of effort. Progressive overload isn't just about numbers on the bar. It's about how close you're training to your limits. If you've been stopping 6 reps shy of failure for months, don't expect miracles. On the flip side, if you're grinding to absolute failure on every set, every workout, you're going to fry yourself before long. The sweet spot for overload is usually pushing most sets within about 1 to 3 reps of failure. Hard enough to force adaptation, but not so hard that you can't recover. That's where growth happens. Now let's connect this back to recovery, because overload without recovery is just digging a hole deeper and deeper. Imagine you add more weight every week, but you're not sleeping enough, your diet is garbage, and your joints are screaming. That's not real overload, that's self-destruction. Overload only works if your body can actually adapt to the stress. That's why balancing effort, volume, and recovery is so important. It all ties together. Progressive overload is also where the mental game kicks in. Training isn't supposed to feel comfortable forever. If you're doing it right, it's supposed to get harder. Those last few reps where your body wants to quit, but you keep going, that's overload in action. But it takes discipline to chase that consistently. Too many lifters either get lazy and coast with the same weights, or they go too far and try to overload every single set, like maniacs. The smart approach is steady, intentional progression that builds over months and years. One of the best ways to ensure overload is to track your training. Write down your weights, reps, and sets. Don't rely on memory. If you benched 25 for 8 reps last week, aim for 9 this week, or 230 for 8. If you squatted 315 for 3 sets of 5, maybe try 3 sets of 6 next time. The logbook doesn't lie. If the numbers are going up over time, you're overloading. If they're not, you've got work to do. At the end of the day, progressive overload is what turns a decent split into a growth machine. You can argue about training methods all day, but this principle doesn't change. If you're lifting more over time, you're growing. If you're not, you're stagnating. It's as simple and as brutally honest as that. The most effective training split is always the one that lets you consistently apply progressive overload without breaking down. That's the real magic formula. Not a secret routine, not a fancy exercise order, just hard, smart, progressive training week after week, year after year.